Well, first of all, we have to define what a currency board is, because there's a lot of confusion. People comment on it, especially in Turkey, and they actually don't know what they're talking about. Most of the commentary is just not correct. It's by people who aren't informed and don't know what a currency board is. So we have to define it. A currency board is a set of rules governing a monetary institution, and those rules provide for the following: that a domestic money is issued, and the domestic money trades at an absolutely fixed exchange rate with free convertibility with an anchor currency. And that anchor currency is required to be reserved against the issuance of the domestic currency 100%. So if you have a Turkish lira and you had a currency board, the Turkish lira would trade at a fixed exchange rate, let's say with the US dollar, if the US dollar was the anchor, and the US dollar reserves would have to equal 100% of the amount of Turkish lira that were issued. So as a result of that, the Turkish lira is really just a clone of the US dollar, or whatever the anchor is. You could have gold could be the anchor, and the Turkish lira would be an anchor. It would be a clone of gold, or the euro. So that's what it is. It's a very simple institutional arrangement, and the key to it is that it doesn't allow for any monetary policy discretion. In other words, if you had a currency board and the lira was being issued by a currency board, the CBRT would not have any monetary policy discretion. The only thing they would be doing, if someone wanted lira, they would have to come in with foreign exchange and exchange it for new lira, and that's it. Or if they didn't want the lira, they bring the lira in and exchange it for the foreign exchange reserves, and it would be perfectly credible because you have 100% reserves. So how would you do this in Turkey? I've written a book with Dr. Kurt Schuler that's published in Turkish, as you know, and that book lays out all the details of it. But to summarize, you would change the law that governed the CBRT to be a currency board law. That's all you would have to do. And that's exactly what I did in 1997 in Bulgaria with the Bulgarian National Bank. The Bulgarian National Bank, since July of 1997, operates as a currency board. So the Bulgarian lev is issued, and it trades at a fixed exchange rate now with the euro. Originally it was a Deutschmark, but now it's with the euro, and it's backed 100% with euro reserves. So the Bulgarian lev is just as good as the euro. It's exactly the same as the euro.
Yeah.
And that system allows for the following. What happens is that it gives credibility to the monetary system because everyone knows that the politicians are not meddling with the money, and they're in a straitjacket. There's nothing they can do. The central bank's in a straitjacket. The president of the republic is in a straitjacket. All the politicians are in a straitjacket. They can't mess around with the money. And that works perfectly. There have never been any failures of a currency board. And that includes the one in 1918 that John Maynard Keynes established in North Russia in the middle of a civil war. That one worked perfectly, even though there was a civil war going on. Everyone wanted that currency board, North Russian ruble. They didn't want the other rubles because they knew the North Russian ruble was backed 100% with gold. So the North Russian ruble was just as good as gold. No. These people are ignorant. They do not know what they're talking about. The money comes in. It doesn't go out, it comes in. Foreign direct investment comes in. Look at Bulgaria. Bulgaria, when we put in the currency board, did have hyperinflation. They had hyperinflation. The monthly inflation rate was 242% per month. Today, I measured the monthly inflation rate in Turkey today is 3.24%. In Bulgaria, it was 242% per month, not per year, per month. So we put the currency board in, and what happened? The money starts coming in. We tripled the amount of foreign reserves in Bulgaria in 18 months. They went up 3 times in 18 months. The banking system was insolvent when we put in the currency board, and in 18 months, it was solvent. The whole thing was fine. The money comes in. Now, why does the money come in? The money comes in because of arbitrage, because what happens when you put the currency board in, the interest rate, I'm just giving the Bulgarian example, your neighbor, right next door to Turkey. The interest rate in Bulgarian lev denominated assets, it's higher than at that time the German mark. The German mark was the reserve currency. So what do? You borrow German marks at low interest rate and exchange them for Bulgarian lev. You take the German marks in to the Bulgarian National Bank, which is a currency board. You exchange the German marks for the Bulgarian lev, and you use the Bulgarian lev to buy Bulgarian lev bonds or put the Bulgarian lev in a savings account. And the interest rate will be a lot higher than the German marks that you borrowed. So it's a risk-free profit. So the funds flow in, not out. So this idea that somehow currency boards would be dangerous and the money would fly, this is a stupid statement. It's based on ignorance. People don't know what they're talking about. Look at all 70 currency boards that have ever existed in history, and that is what happens. The money comes in, it doesn't go out. In Turkey, of course, it's very important that inflation be crushed. That would happen right away with the currency board. In Bulgaria, it happened within 30 days. The inflation was completely gone in Bulgaria. So it happens very, very fast. The inflation goes away, and interest rates go down. If inflation goes down, interest rates go down. So in that sense, it would be ideal for President Erdogan. Erdogan, he wants low interest rates. Well, everyone wants low interest rates. The question is, how do you get low interest rates? And there's only one way to do it in Turkey, only one, period. And that's with the currency board. So you put in a currency board, inflation goes down, interest rates go down, and you've got stability. And stability might not be everything, but everything is nothing without stability. So this is the only solution for Turkey. Everything else they're talking about is complete nonsense. It will never work in Turkey, never. If that's the case, you have to change the rules of the game. You have to change the institutional arrangement. You have to change the law governing the CBRT. And that I know how to do that. I did it in Bulgaria. You do it. I could fix the whole thing in 30 days. It would be fixed. Everything fixed. The crisis would be gone. Yeah. It's amazing, but it's true, because I've done this in Estonia. I did it in Lithuania. I did it in Bulgaria. I did it in Bosnia Herzegovina. And it's been done many other places. Look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong's the most famous currency board. And Hong Kong is reestablished after a currency crisis. They reestablished their currency board in 1983. John Greenwood designed that, one of my good friends. And Greenwood put in the currency board in 1983. That was approved by Margaret Thatcher. And it's gone through every kind of crisis, including the recent political upheavals in Hong Kong. No problem. No problem at all. Thanks to the currency board system, the Hong Kong dollar, 7.8 Hong Kong dollar for $1 US. The Hong Kong dollar is backed 100% with US dollar reserves. And the Hong Kong dollar is therefore a clone of the US dollar. It's the Hong Kong dollar, it's exactly the same as the US dollar. And the system is perfectly stable. And of course, interest rates and inflation in Hong Kong mirror the interest rates and inflation in the United States. So that's what happens with the currency board. If you had the US dollar as the anchor for the lira and a currency board, you'd have interest rates and inflation in Turkey about the same as the United States. What I use to calculate the inflation, and it's very, very accurate for countries where the inflation rate is over 25%. So if it's over 25%, it's called purchasing power parity. It's a very standard model that's been around for over 100 years in economics, and I use that and I'm able to calculate the inflation rate every day. And the inflation is a broad measure of inflation. It includes not just things that are in the consumer price index. It includes all assets, real estate, all goods, all services, everything is included. And so what you end up with is an all-inclusive measure of inflation for everything that's being traded and transacted in the economy. And this, I published this in many scholarly articles, and it's absolutely golden when you have inflation over 25%. Now, yes. I said that, and so here's what you do. You have to look at the change in the exchange rate between the Turkish lira and the US dollar. Okay, that's one element, and the differential in measured inflation in Turkey and the US, and then go through the arithmetic, and bang, you get an implied inflation number. Now let's just see what that is today. I said that the monthly inflation rate I know was today 3.24% in Turkey. I'll give you the rate today. The official rate is not accurate. It's way too low. Inflation is much higher in Turkey. Right now, today, the inflation rate is 102.62% on January 7th, 2022. A little over 100%. So it's over, it's like 3 times higher than the official rate. I'm the only one measuring inflation accurately now in Turkey, and the press doesn't report on this in general. This remains a mystery to me. Either the journalists are afraid to cover it, or they're just unfamiliar with the technical literature, because the technical literature, the scholarly literature, is all in favor of doing what I do, using the method that I use to measure things. So it's one of two things. Either the journalists are afraid to report it, or they are just unfamiliar with the technical literature. They don't understand it, and don't know what's going on. So the only thing that's reported generally is just the official number. Whatever the official number is, that's it. But the official number is usually wrong. I mean, it's not correct. Term, you have to stabilize things. Stability might not be everything, but everything is nothing without stability. And you have to put in a currency board. That's the only short-term thing. And that is the basis for other reforms. Singapore became independent in 1965. And they had, it turned out, a great leader, one of the greatest leaders in the 20th century. Lee Kuan Yew was the leader of Singapore at the time. The first thing he did was establish stability with a currency board. So they had a currency board. The second thing is that Lee Kuan Yew said they would receive no foreign aid and have no foreign involvement from the IMF, the World Bank, anything like that. The third thing, he said they would have no corruption, zero corruption, no tolerance for corruption. The fourth thing is that they would have first-class competitive industry, and the way that they would do that is to have total free trade. So the Singaporean businesses would have to compete with any international business. The fifth thing is that they would have a small government with low taxes and few regulations, not very much red tape. The sixth thing is that they'd have first-class civil servants and they pay them first-class wages. So that is the model. Those are the six things to review. Currency board, no foreign involvement, no begging bowl, no foreign aid. They never accepted any foreign aid at all in Singapore. No corruption. First-class competitive free trade. Small government, low taxes, no red tape, and first-class civil servants, high pay. By the way, one thing on the Singapore, if we go back to 1965, when Singapore became independent, it was one of the poorest places in the world. It was very poor. Now it's one of the richest. So if you want to become rich, you have to do what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. That's the only way. And that's, I can state that categorically. It works. We have a real world natural experiment with all these policies that I'm proposing. Lee Kuan Yew did most of these things in Singapore, and it worked like a charm. And Turkey would just explode if they had the Singapore type model. It would be fantastic, because Turkey, number one, little Singapore is a little tiny place. Turkey's a big, powerful, potentially big, powerful place. And you need to do what Lee Kuan Yew did in 1965 in Singapore, or what I did in little Bulgaria next door in 1997. And by the way, the Bulgarians are huge corruption problems. They're not as big as they would be if they did not have the currency board. The currency board keeps it slightly under control. But one thing, the politicians can't meddle with the monetary policy in Bulgaria. And as a result, the budget's almost always balanced. The debt to GDP ratio in Bulgaria is the second lowest in the EU. Second lowest is Bulgaria. The lowest is Estonia. And Estonia in 1992, I put a currency board in Estonia in 1992. So they've had very good control in Estonia. Mm-hmm. The monetary problem and inflation problem and interest rate problem would be solved, period. 100%. I could do it in 30 days. If Erdogan had me doing this as President Stoyanov did in Bulgaria, 30 days, it would all be fixed. That's the end of the story. Now, that you said, would this solve all the problems? And the answer to that is no, it wouldn't solve all the problems, because remember, with the Singapore strategy, we had 6 things. Lee Kuan Yew was doing 6 things. The currency board's only number 1. But if you don't do number 1, you can't do the other 5, because you would not have stability. And without stability, you can't do any of the other reforms. If, by the way, if the currency board was put in, let's say President Erdogan decided to put a currency board in, inflation would be smashed immediately. Interest rates would go down immediately. The lira would be as good as whatever the anchor was. Let's say it's a US dollar, it would be as good as the US dollar. All of a sudden, what would happen politically? Erdogan would be a national hero. I'd leave that choice up to the Turks. I would leave that choice up to the Turks. The US dollar would be, the US dollar is in a way a natural, because it is the international currency. Most trade that takes place in Turkey actually takes place in US dollars. Oil is all priced in US dollars. Natural gas is all priced in US dollars. All commodities are priced in US dollars. So that's one positive for the US dollar and natural for the US dollar. In a way, the euro has some attractions because Turkey claims that it wants to eventually join the EU. So the euro as an anchor is natural. But also gold is a possibility. I've reckoned, and gold's a possibility because maybe that Turkey does not want to be that close to the United States or that close to the European Union, and gold is not issued by any sovereign. There's no government issues gold. Plus the Turks like gold. I mean, they love gold. So gold would be something that I would put on the agenda as a possibility, but that's a detail that I just in Bulgaria, for example, I didn't recommend anything. I didn't recommend the US dollar or the Deutschmark. The Bulgarians decided it was going to be the Deutschmark. Fine, Deutschmark was good. Yeah, I appreciate my following on the Twitter, and I would encourage even more Turks to join me on the Twitter. We have it's the second largest group of Twitter followers that I have. America is number 1 and Turkey is number 2. And now the Focus Economics rates the economic influencers in the world, and I'm rated number 5 in the world. And that's largely because of the Twitter following. Today, 392,500 followers. But we would welcome more Turkish followers, and I appreciate the Turkish followers that I have. And I think eventually the real message is we really have to establish a currency board in Turkey as we did in Bulgaria in 1997. If we did, the picture would be, the clouds would be removed, the inflation would collapse, the interest rates would collapse, stability would be established, and things would start to boom in Turkey. You asked about foreign direct investment. The only way to turn that around and get more coming in is currency board. Years ago, the foreign direct investment, I think it was less than $1 billion a year. I remember the big milestone was the year it went over $1 billion. It was a big celebration in Turkey. So we want to get that foreign direct investment going up, because the Turkish potential is huge. if Turkey had a good stable currency, Turkey would really be put on the map. Now, Erdogan says he wants to put it in the top 10. The only way to get it in the top 10 is with a currency board. It's the only way. I just received in the mail my copies yesterday. Here's the book, and the chapter I've contributed to the book actually is something called a money doctor's reflections on currency reform. So exactly, that's exactly the chapter. So that's all the currency boards and dollarization that I've been involved with over the years. I recount and document in that chapter. And the important part of that is that I'm not just advocating some theoretical thing I'm dreaming up. I've actually done this. I'm a realist. I'm a little bit like Ataturk in that sense. He was a realist. He had his feet on the ground, and I have actually done this. So if I'm advising President Erdogan to do a currency board, I can tell him, oh, I did this in Bulgaria. I did this in Bosnia. I did this in Estonia. I did this in Lithuania. And I can show him exactly what happened, you see. So that's what that chapter really is about. And it's fully documented. So people can see how it worked. We have many friends in Istanbul. And we used to come about 2 times, maybe 3 times per year. But when the civil war started in Syria, it became too complicated and dangerous, so we stopped. So since the Syrian civil war, we have not been in Turkey. I've not been in the new airport. Ataturk, there are many things that are important about him. The main thing is that he brought Turkey out of the dark ages and into the 20th century. So that's the main thing, and that has things associated with it. He energized Turkey. It got energy. With Ataturk, and he's still even today a symbol of modernity. Ataturk, any place in the world, anyone in the world, they know who Ataturk is, and even if they don't know any details, they know he was a modernizer. And I would say, in general, we can say he was one of the world leaders who actually made a difference in the world. I'm not saying Ataturk was perfect. No one's perfect. But I am saying there's no doubt he is one of the world leaders who actually made a difference. And everyone, most people, educated people in the world, know who Ataturk is.